What's up, everybody? Derek Johnson here. Some know me as Rattletrap 1776. Just thought I'd go live today just to tell everybody thank you for your prayers, your support, your condolences on behalf of my hero, my best friend, and my dad, who meant the world to me. I still can't really put it into words right now because I don't know how you do that, but out of respect for him, I just had to take a little break just because, and I'm still going to be affected for a long time because he was my best friend, and he taught me everything I know. He was a heck of a businessman, and a lot of things that he taught me through life that I'll take through the rest of my life and my journey. It's just hard to really put it into words, but I do want to thank you for your prayers, your support, your love, your messages, your cards, received cards. So I do really appreciate that, and all the cards that have been sent, I will return a thank you. Spoiler alert, I guess, but when I can get to that. But anyway, thank you for that, and it's great to be back. I'm not going to stay live too long just because of, you may hear some sound in the background where I am, but there's somebody cutting their grass. But anyway, I've been getting a lot of questions about Israel and, Iran and different things like that. And, it's kind of like what I've been saying before is you got to remember that 45-47 is your visual that this is an operation. That is your visual. So you have a full visual, as I'm saying, of what's going on. So what you have to do is, if you want to know what's external, what's actually really internal, but what's external from the media, is you got to get in and know what you're supposed to know as an American. You have every right to know the law. You don't have to be a lawyer or an attorney or a judge or anything of that nature to know the law. But you might want to know it if you're going to quote it. So it's the same thing with President Trump, where, there's a lot of things that he didn't know necessarily lawfully, but guess what? He has the privy to it, and he has all the nominated positions, the endorsed positions, and people that he hires. All right, so, you want to know what's going on lawfully, then you got to rid all this other noise that you're hearing from all these mouths out there. I mean, there are people, they're probably good people, but there's a lot of podcasters who don't know what's going on because they don't study President Trump's playbook. So if you want to know what's going on, you got to rid all this other noise, and you got to go straight to what is President Trump passing, what executive orders are he signing. Then when you get in an executive order, you got to go look at all the other codes that are labeled in that executive order. Then you got to go read and study those and comprehend those. So it's a lot of multitasking. It's a lot of muscle memory and memorization. And so that's all you need to know. And once you learn that, then you can look at external things because your foundation will be strong in what President Trump's doing. Then you can externally look at different people and be able to weed out what is and what isn't. And I still receive text messages from podcasters and different people who go, hey, what do you think it is? And I'm like, did it come from the horse's mouth? No, it didn't. It's coming from someone else out there who don't have a foundation in the 45-47. So that's what makes my books so unique. They're #1 bestsellers, one, because of you, the people who do read and study, but also because they're the only books that outline the 45-47. And I don't need anything else. That's why some messages don't get answered, because you're focusing on things that don't even matter. Round earth, flat earth. That's biblical, but it doesn't have anything to do with 45-47. All right, you're getting all wrapped up in Israel. Some of you are letting what you've heard for years about Israel get in the way. It doesn't pertain to what's going on right here, right now, in this moment, and our future. So it's kind of like Palantir. A lot of people are still hung up on Palantir. Oh, they have our information. They've had your information. Had, plural, and past. They've had your information. If you read the article, read, not just view it, read it, and then receive it, it tells you in the article, the main article is a Palantir, that it says they're taking existing contracts and compiling data. Existing means the people before President Trump had your information. So would you rather go back to the swamp and them have your information? Or do you trust President Trump and what he's doing in the military and the people who are now in position? It's one or the other. It is that simple. That's not me being a jerk and all these other words. That is real reality, and it is what it is. Quit listening to all this other people out there who are just trying to, they're using fear, and you're listening to people who don't even have anything to do with President Trump. Not a thing. So, Palantir, you use the infrastructure already there. If the infrastructure's okay, but the people are bad, then you just remove the people and put new people in there. You use the same structure, infrastructure, systems, whatever. It don't mean you got to tear down the whole building and tear down the coding and the systems and all. It don't. It's real simple. So many of you focus on like words like cabal, and you focus on the swamp in the other kind of manner. Like, you act like they're still there. They're not still there. If you are reading what you're supposed to read and listening to what you're supposed to listen to, they're not there. As also Dan Scavino says all the time, don't let the 10% make you think they're the 90%. They're not. If you're reading what you're supposed to be reading, studying, and comprehending, all you need is President Trump, his executive orders, his proclamations, treaties if there are any new ones, and then also all the other documents. That's it. That's all you need. Because what President Trump has done is why the libtards and the resurrected rhinos, what they're so mad about is their people didn't do this in the first place. And then two, it's also exposing the abuse of national security, which is your security. It's exposing what they didn't do with their abuse of national emergencies. All President Trump had to do, even if this wasn't an operation, all he had to do was come in and enforce the law as it reads on paper. And that exposes them right out the gate. Because all these years they've been declaring national emergencies and not enforcing anything. Real simple. And as President Trump said in 2020, you can take his quote and you can interchange it with what's happening right now. It don't just have to pertain to 2020. All you got to do is take this quote that he said. He said the cure cannot be bigger than the problem. Real simple. The cure cannot be bigger than the problem. And a lot of you out there, God love you. God love you. A lot of you out there, you're making the problem bigger than the cure. And you're not trusting the man with the cure, the resolution, the solvent. Whatever word you want to put there for cure, you can move the word cure and put in solution, resolution, solvent. You're still not trusting the man you claim that you support, the man you claim you love, the man you claim you back, the man you claim you got it all over you got it all over your Facebooks, and you got it all over social media. But this right here ain't backing up any of that. And that's all you got to do is read and study the man with the plan, because 45-47 is the plan. Are we to the end of 47 yet? Nope. So just got to chill and relax. Enjoy the ride, baby. Now look at my dad. My dad loved President Trump. When he rolled down the escalator, before he even rolled down the escalator, my dad, when we were talking about this years ago, he goes, I know who I'm voting for. I said, who? He said, Donald J. Trump. And it was before President Trump announced he was going to run. He had an inclination. I said, me too. I said, me too. So see, you couldn't know, like you'll hear podcasters out there, they'll say, oh, I've been knowing this for years. No, you haven't. You couldn't have. There's no way you could have, because every law, it took to about 2020 to have a complete picture of what President Trump was doing lawfully and the military. So there's no way you could have known before then. You could have had an inclination from about 2017 to about 2019 if you'd have been reading and studying executive orders, because certain executive orders with national emergencies have other implications. But you couldn't have known the full, complete picture. So that's why you hear all these people out there fighting about, oh, I've been knowing for years and years and years. There's no way to. So you gotta watch who you follow from that angle, because a guy like me can sit here and tell you there's no way you could have known until you knew certain things that fell into place. So it's not a sword match on who knew more and who knew that. But you can know now because, like me, I have the only books that show that. And timestamps won't lie on that. They're in my documents that you can still access for free, the documents.info. I still keep that website. But I published those January 2021. And that was when we were still heavily on military occupation. Then we moved into 21 to 2025, which would have been an occupation, but also moving into your continuity government. Now we're in the military government, like the President Eisenhower plan, where you have businessmen and women and veterans in your nominated spots and your endorsed spots. So it's an atomic midwife, which you can go read on RutgersUniversity.edu about the atomic midwife. You can read about how President Eisenhower's plan was they call it a constitutional dictatorship, but it's lawful. People hear the word dictator and they go, well, but you got to apply what we just came out of. You got to apply that we were coming out of this swamp who did dictate your life, who did control your life. And what President Eisenhower meant by a constitutional dictatorship was the fact that what you came out of was so bad that in order to have a new foundation and a clean out, then you had to establish it to where no one could infiltrate that new establishment. So you go into a military government, and then you're selecting. That's why when President Trump nominates somebody, your butt better go vote for them. Don't vote for someone, oh, I like so-and-so. If you do that, you're going against the man's plan. And it shows you're not reading the man's plan. And you can know the man's plan. That's what put me on the map, is the man's plan. That's why I haven't been deleted. The FBI ain't been at my door. No one's knocked on my door. They ain't shut me down because I show you what President Trump is doing lawfully by the military and federal. And all I do, everything that I talk about reflects back on him. And you don't have anything to fear by that. So all this Israel talk and all this stuff, you got to let people who are trying to grip you with fear, you got to stop that. There's nothing to fear. And if you were reading God's Word, the Bible, and if you were studying the origin of Hebrew and the origin of Jesus Christ and the origin, if you were studying that along with the laws and orders, it's the farthest thing from the Antichrist. All these people out there saying, oh, he's leading this into this and that. This. No. If you were reading what you're supposed to be reading. But see, most people are Christians from the outside in. Christians from the outside in. You're supposed to be a Christian from the inside out. And a lot of quote-unquote Christians, you're going to these churches that don't have a cross on it. It don't have the word Jesus or God on it anywhere. You're seeing little fat boys. I call them apple dumplings. They're going up there behind the podium. They don't have a suit and tie on. They're not being reverent to God. They got skinny jeans on, and they're too fat for skinny jeans. And they don't mention anything about God and the hellfire and brimstone. You're just getting a little pat on the back. Oh, I'm sorry you had a rough week, but be sure to pay your tithes. Pay your tithes first, and then it's going to be okay. It's all right. God loves you, and it's okay. They don't talk about hellfire and brimstone. They don't talk about David slaying Goliath anymore. They don't talk about all the hellfire and brimstone. They don't talk about how you're supposed to trust God and that God may put you through some trials and tribulations in your life. We all go through them. It's part of it, right? God tests you the right kind of way. But if you're out there, blah, 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 Jesus, 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 God, 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 he might test you even more. It's like the Bible tells you. The Bible says it's better not to know than to know and deny. Well, denying don't necessarily just mean that you deny God as the Father and God as the Creator and Christ as the mediator. That don't mean that. If you deny faith, if you deny patience, if you deny certain things like that, God He sees that. You're out there, yeah. And all of you and your Israel problems, that's your problem, not mine. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to say, look, Israel, the old Israel has nothing to do with what President Trump's doing. What, you don't want those people to live? You want those people to die based off something you heard off of .net and some little fella that didn't even graduate high school. Now, some people who didn't graduate high school are smart, but when you're listening to someone who has no foundation in God, no foundation in Jesus, no foundation in the Bible, no foundation in Hebrew, no foundation in President Trump, no foundation in the 45-47, what are you doing listening to them? You're allowing the negativity to overtake you and control you. And that's not what this page is for. This page is to show you that, look, God gifted me with a photographic memory. God gifted me with the ability to take all the laws and orders and put them in one setting and one sitting. And you don't need anything else. Now, it's still your prerogative, and you still have freedom to go look at everybody that has a moving mouth. You can do that. But if you really want to know what President Trump's using, you don't need anyone else. Because once there's someone like me who can take the full picture and condense it as best as possible, you don't need anything else. Because what other podcasters do is they cherry pick and they throw you crumbs. Most of them are throwing crumbs on purpose, though. They're not studying what they're supposed to be studying. When they close this screen down, they're not reading, studying. And you keep running back to the very ones who are bamboozling you and don't care about your feelings and your emotions and all that. So in the past, when I have shown my emotions, it's because I care about you. And I'm just serving beyond my service, even though I've got some cool, contracts and different things like that, external. But at the same time, that is my service beyond service. And people who have met me know that I'll stand there and talk to you till I absolutely have to, be pulled away or whatever it is if I've got obligations. But anyone who's met me knows that. So I do care about you the right way, and I don't want you fearful. I don't want you scared. I want you to trust President Trump for the right reasons. Now, it's not my duty to coerce you or persuade you. But when you go read and study, and you take executive orders, proclamations, national emergencies, and treaties, the four main ways, there's only 4 ways that military pairs with federal. 4. And I just named them. 4. I've got Instagram going over here, by the way. If you see me look this way, Facebook, over here. There's only 4 ways that military pairs with federal. I just named them. Executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, and treaties. That's it. Guess who has to be involved in all 4 of those? The president. So that's why when you hear libtards out there and resurrected rhinos, oh, the Constitution, oh, we got to protect. The Constitution, Article 2, tells you that who's in control of the Army and the Navy. Sorry, Air Force. Sorry, Space Force. Didn't have y'all back then, but it doesn't matter. It tells you who's in control of the military. Well, guess what? 4 ways that military pairs with federal requires the president. And President Trump, right now, there's 51. I had to go back and see what's been updated. But right now, there was, as of a month ago, there were 51 executive orders with national emergencies open. Active. Open and active. 51. One national emergency alone, comes with 120 statute powers. Telecommunications, restricting commerce, like tariffs. It's all been in law for years. That's why the left lost their minds. But if you'll understand or comprehend, whatever word you like, some people don't like the word understand, but some of you do need to understand. You need to stand down, chill out, relax, have some patience. Some of you need to understand that this wasn't going to be an overnight thing. This is an operation, 45-47. There's a lawful tactic and strategy that we used in World War II, where it's called a puppet government. We never use it on ourselves, but hey, it's a tactic, it's there, it's a strategy, it's lawful, and you can use that. You give President Trump 4 years here, you pull him back, you go into a continuity government. He's still in power and control in another manner. You use the puppet government to expose the swamp, which is what they did with quote-unquote Joe. Then you put him back in another 4. So he got 12 years straight out the gate, what would have taken 8 by the minds of Americans who think that term limits are constitutional. Term limits are not constitutional. You might want to go back and read Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, the founders, but also the sole author of the Constitution, James Madison. You might want to go back and read the Federalist Papers. It's very clear. Very clear. But there was a difference in a monarchy and a king and then a president serving for a life term, meaning you keep voting them in. As long as you wanted them there and you wanted to vote them in, you could have kept them there. That's what the founders believed. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton make up 80 of 85 Federalist Papers. John Jay only wrote 5 Federalist Papers. Article 2 of the Constitution tells you 4 years in a term. 4 years in a term. It don't say anything about Congress putting term limits on the president. And if you go read the Constitution, there are cases where it does say, well, the Congress is to do this, the so-and-so's to do that. So if the founders would have wanted term limits, they would have specified that, because they specified in other parts of the Constitution that the Congress would do something. And Congress has. Congress changed the date to January the 6th. The original date, I think it was December the 10th. So if we all said, oh, we don't like January 6th anymore, well, it would revert back to December the 10th until otherwise. There's cases in the Constitution that shows you our founders were very clear with their intent. And in the court of law, intent and motives are all you work with in the court of law. Intent and motives. That's it. What was their intent? Well, their intent is clear when you go read the Constitution. That's why it's so crazy. Democrats, dumbo rats is what I call them, dumbo rats, and libtards, y'all don't want to use the Constitution as your crutch. You don't want to. That's the worst thing you could do. The best thing you could do is say, hey, let's have us a war, and if we beat y'all, we're going to establish a new Constitution. Okay, I can go with that, but you're not going to beat us on the battlefield. So there's that, but you can try. The worst thing you can do, dumb rats and libtards and you resurrected rhinos out there, the worst thing you can do is use the Constitution as your crutch. Because guys like me can slap you silly with it. Their intent was very clear. So if you'll chill out a little bit, this was not going to be one of those times where the world stops and President Trump pulls out a Dead Sea Scroll longer than the U.S. and goes, well, here's what we did on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 years. He's not going to do that. And some of y'all are just waiting for the cloud to just spread open like the Red Sea and go, ain't going to happen. It's a continuity. It's a continuous operation. So you're already well behind, which means you need to go back to day 1 and President Trump's first executive order, or the first national emergency, which was about any kind of trafficking, actually. It covers all trafficking. And you got to start from there and work your way forward. And then you will see his plan. Like John Bolton pleading guilty. You could have known that 2 or 3 years ago if you'd have been listening to President Trump. Well, actually, longer than that, 6 years ago. You could already know what the plan was. You could already know. And then when you see John Bolton get on CNN and kiss President Trump's rear end, where he said, well, he talks about the 3rd term. The host didn't ask about a 3rd term. The host asked, could President Trump serve a 2nd term with the allegations on him? And John says, well, the Constitution specifically bans a 3rd term. He's telling you right there. He's telling you right there this is an operation, 45-47. The dash will not count as a term for President Trump because it was a strategic operation. It's a sting operation. It's a pre-planned operation. That's what makes it so awesome. And that's why when I was writing those documents way back when, my mother asked me, she said, if you could be known for these, would you want to be known for them and put them out there and they scatter? Or would you rather them scatter and no one know who you are and people see the results? And I said, well, the only reason I want to be known for them is because what will happen is some schmuck out there who's never been in the military whatsoever at any capacity will try to act like they wrote them and take credit for it. And that's not what this operation's about. So it's a catch-22 there in another way, and you see it today. You see all these podcasters, oh, I've been doing this. No, you didn't. You did not. So that's what you have, is you have a bunch of scammers and frauds and people out there who are using my name and using me. They'll even do look like they're interviewing me and take clips of me, and I'm not even sitting there whatsoever, because they want people to think that. And all they'd have to do is reach out to my management and go, hey, you think you'd do an interview? Maybe. Depends on what your motives are. But see, we're in that golden age, and what's going to happen is when you shift into the golden age, you're going to have people who just want to make money off of names. So that's why you all have to be careful. At the end of the day, this is still about our nation first, well, God first, our nation second, you third, then President Trump and the military, and then everything else, right? Even President Trump would say that. This is not about him. This is not about what he did. Now, he did take one for the team. He did put his name, brand, and image, and his family name, brand, and image up on this. But at the end of the day, somebody had to do this. Somebody had to take one for the team. Someone had to stand in that fire. Someone had to. Because what we've all lived through, when you see it exposed on paper, but actually in your pocketbooks, then it'll make sense. It should make sense already. But like Jimmy Kimmel and all this stuff you're seeing with CNN and ABC and all these different things, it's 47 United States Code 606. It's all there. It's the Telecommunications Act, 1934 and 1996. It's in 47 U.S. Code Section 606. President Trump is a wartime president. What did he just admit on video just a couple of days ago? Again, well, I'm a wartime president. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a difference in a president of the past who started man-made wars and a wartime president by law on paper. The wartime president was supposed to be exactly what I have outlined, that he has invoked via laws, national emergencies, proclamations, etc. Huge difference. And it's exactly what President and five-star general, rare five-star general, President Eisenhower established. Now, there was a gentleman that came on a podcast not terribly long ago that said, oh, you're wrong about the continuity government plan. It started way back in the 20s and the 30s. I'm like, yes, the continuity government. But President Eisenhower had the continuity government integrated with a military government. He had this plan that says, okay, yeah, we can go through a continuity government, but we need a plan on the backside of it that it basically, locks in our success. Yeah, we can get through a continuity government, but can we sustain after that? So his was a modified plan where you take businessmen, sorry ladies, at that time they didn't include the women, but this time around President Trump is including the women, all right, the ladies. Smart, intelligent women, not women who use DEI and all this other bullcrap. Women who have earned their place, rightfully so. All right, their business and their success shows this. He's using businessmen and women, and also it says and/or military. Most of President Trump's nominations are special operations veterans and/or Navy SEALs and things of that nature. So it's a really cool thing that you're witnessing. And that's why it baffles me that so many President Trump supporters, conservatives and Republicans, would not want to know what President Trump's working with. Again, military laws, military strategies, military tactics, military regulations, military publications, military manuals, military directives, they're not conspiracy theories. They're lawful tactics and strategies, and they've been in law since before our foundation. And our military law heavily, when you start reading and studying it, our military law is about prevention. We got to prevent this on the front. This is why you need to learn this right now. It doesn't matter how old you are, you need to learn prevention tactics. You've got to get where you prevent the swamp from happening. A lot of people's attitudes out there have been, oh, when is this? Oh, nothing changes till we see arrest. Da, 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 da. No, nothing changes till you get your heads out of your rear ends and you learn prevention methods and prevention tactics and prevention strategies, and you learn when, where, and how we vote. You also learn everything that we've gone through, and also how do we prevent this from happening. You should be in the Native American mindset, thinking 7 generations out. You should be concerned about your children, their children, their children, their children, their children, their children. 7. You should be looking. Some of you are so focused on the past that, hey, if you're rooting for someone to be hung, strung up and hung and killed, what's the difference in that and then the other side want President Trump the same way? See, you're showing that you have no cognitive awareness of how we're supposed to move forward. We have punishments in place, but guess who did that? Y'all did that. You people out there complaining, y'all allowed this to happen. 535 members of Congress, a president and a vice president, and a few members in the cabinet controlled 335 million people. We're now up to 350 million. But during that time period before President Trump, no, 335 million people didn't have a clue what 535 members of Congress were supposed to be doing under your watch, which is outlined in our Declaration of Independence, which is way more important than the Constitution. The Declaration is the one that tells us, but when a long train of abuses, it tells you when this becomes destructive of these ends, this meaning what? A government like that. It is their right, it is their duty to alter, to offthrow such government and reset it. That is what 45-47 is. So, yeah. It was good to have this little rekindling moment, because right now we're in the final stages. We're in the final countdown. All right? We're getting to the golden age. President Trump's done posted twice in this week, the best is yet to come. Well, that means the best ain't here yet. So you got to chill out and relax. There's not going to be a day where the whole world just shuts down and they pull out a scroll again and they read all the things they've done. You're supposed to already see that. And if you're reading and studying what you're supposed to be reading and studying, you wouldn't have to do that. So my advice is, hey, if you can't afford a book, which is great, that's fine. Go to the documents.info, catch up to 2021, well, January 2021. Then go to my Rumble account and start from wherever you want to start and work your way forward. But don't start from the front, start from the back. Start from my very first post and work your way forward. And then you got to study. You got to do whatever your study tactics are. You got to sit down with a pen and a paper, highlighter, write down all these things, and you got to pull up your laptop and pull these up, read and study. Then you got to pair them together, piece them together. And then you're going to have a clear picture going, oh my gosh, this is the most biblical, historical, monumental operation known to man. And you're going to love every bit of it, especially when you love President Trump, you love Dan Scavino, you love Devin Nunes. I mean, there's a lot of people that have proven clear, great people. And once you learn that, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, again, it's the most awesome operation known to man. And it's a reset. And you're going to, if you live long enough, then you're going to see that. If you don't live and you're a Christian, you're going to see all the answers when you get to heaven anyway. Military aircraft right there. So, again, thank you for the prayers. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the condolences. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the messages. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the cards. Thank you for all that. I do appreciate it. My family appreciates it. So I'm gonna sign off today. One, it's burning up, and then two, I think my computer's dying, which it dies pretty quick in the sun. But anyway, it's good to be here, and I'll be back. I'll be start doing my other podcasts. I think my slate opens up this week. My normal podcast that I'll be posting, and I'll be getting back into my normal again on Facebook and Instagram. And we're gonna get through this together. I made a promise to my dad before he passed. I made a promise that I would work on my language, even the little slang words, and I promised that to our preacher that I work on my slang words. And so there's going to be like this new challenge, like a swear tank, right, where I don't say just even simple 4-letter words. So I'm going to try my best to do that and keep my word as best as possible. Yeah, but, the times I have gotten like in an upheave, I guess if you want to call it that, it's just because I'm passionate about it. But I thought, you know what, this would be a good challenge to do. And I'm going to work on my little slang words where I can do that. Because if I ever want to be a preacher one day, I can't be slipping up with a little wordy dirt in the pulpit if I ever wanted to do that one day. So anyway, so I'm going to try to keep that promise. And it wasn't so much of a promise that I had to keep from that angle. It was just more of a challenge. But I'm going to treat it kind of like a promise and work on that. So, but anyway, I'll be coming back live again. Like I said, I'll start that again. I may change the day because Sunday I want to change the day, probably Sunday to like a Friday or a Thursday or something like that. That way I can, even though I know some people's Sabbath day is on a Saturday, but ours in the South's on a Sunday. So I may change that up, but I will be going live again here soon and doing things like that. And then also on other podcasts. So we'll be seeing you all soon. So I'm gonna try to end this right here. There we go.